One of my favorite movies and novels of all time is called The Count of Monte Cristo. There was a young boy of African descent who grew up in 18th century France, relatively poor. He heard of all the heroic exploits of his father during the French campaigns of 17th century France. He later became a novelist when his father had passed away, and he decided to put together some of the heroic exploits of his father. Now let's get into the story. Now, who has ever heard of General Thomas Alexandre Dumas? General Thomas Alexandre Dumas was the most decorated military general of African descent of any Western army at that time. Before he became an army general, Thomas Alexandre Dumas was born in 1762 in Haiti. At the time, it was called Saint Dominique. He was born a slave to an African slave woman and a French nobleman. In his early life, he was a slave, but his father, being a French nobleman, eventually took him to France, where he got a regular education and he got to mix into France's high society. Thomas Alexandre Dumas later joined the French army. Because of his skills and strength, he rose through the ranks really quickly. His leadership skills and fearlessness was also noticed during the French Revolution. As a military leader and an army general, he led the French army through multiple successful campaigns where he earned the reputation of the Black Devil because he was willing to lead soldiers through difficult parts of battle where other military leaders were not willing to go. His later military career was not as glorious. He had multiple clashes with Napoleon. They disagreed in multiple things, including military styles, leadership styles, campaign strategy, and more. He was eventually betrayed and imprisoned for a significant period of time. When he was released, he had a lot of health conditions. He tried getting his pension multiple times, but was unsuccessful because obviously he wasn't the favorite of Napoleon. He eventually died a poor man, leaving behind a young son, Alexandre Dumas. Alexandre Dumas grew up hearing about his father's successful exploits in the French military. He heard about the father's fearlessness on the battlefield. He later became a novelist and wrote books to display the father's heroism, wrongful imprisonment, and betrayal. That's why you have movies like The Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers, and many more, all written by young Alexandre Dumas. Now, every time you watch movies like The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo, just remember that you are watching the reflections of a young boy of African descent, writing about the heroism of his father, who was born a slave and grew up into one of the most decorated generals of African descent in Western history in its time. Thanks for watching. Now, do you like the video? Drop your thoughts down in the comment section. If you know any more stories that we can report like this, just drop the link in the comment section. And remember, this is the story of Mr. Alexandre Dumas, the young boy of African descent who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers, and multiple more.